I'm a big dog, big bear, nigga, I'm a lion. I'm the predator of the prey that is hiding. Oh my, I have found you, nigga. Don't you run from me, little nigga. You are not fast enough. You are not brave enough. You are out of luck. Now it's time for you to die very rough. You have been warned. There is nowhere to run.
Alright, I'd like to start this off by informing you all on what we will be doing on this channel. We will be doing what if videos of different assortments of anime. We could do some gaming in the future if you'd like. And, well, that's all for the announcement. Let's get into this what if video. So, I'd like to start this off. At the end of Hellsing, we see Alucard walking around. This is also after Integra has died, sadly. And he's just thinking about what he's going to do now that he's killed off many of the vampires. He's pretty much dismantled the church, and Integra's gone. So he's walking in a dark forest. He heard that there were sorcerers able to use magic, and he wanted to check it out for himself. So he's walking in this forest as he comes upon a clearing with a bunch of weird looking pillars. And he walks closer to these pillars, and he starts examining them. As he then hears a rustling in a bush, he turns around and shot his gun. And he smelled blood afterward. And he knew that people were watching him. So he looked around, and out of nowhere, a bunch of people in dark robes jump out of the trees, out of the forest, and start chanting. And he's wondering, what are they chanting? Because he's never heard this spell before, or he's never heard this before. And the pillars that are around him start to glow, ominous red and dark, red and black. And the lead sorcerer says, "We banish you, Alucard, to death." And we all know Alucard. He's not going to die that easily. So, when he says that, Alucard felt a pulsing sensation. So he went into his level 0 release and shot out his power, like a lot of it, and his mental state and mind into far away, way farther than Earth, light years upon light years away. And we see Alucard. He's now in a black void, and he's wondering where he is. And he hears a voice that says Alucard, and he turns around and he sees the Grim Reaper. And the Grim Reaper says, "Alucard, seeing that what you did before you got killed, you shot out all of your power, I was able to gather it into this space, seeing that you also put your mental state inside of it. So instead of reincarnating you into your normal world, I will be reincarnating you into a separate one, one different from the reality you know. And there will be someone with you that's reincarnated. So he then says, who is it? Then we see, after Overlord and everything, we see Shalltear Bloodfallen walking around in the Tomb of Nazarick as Albedo turned the corner and shot a fireball at her, as she jumped back and said, "What, Albedo, what are you doing?" And she sees something in Albedo's eyes, kind of like a swirling type pinwheel thing in her eyes, and she says she's under a mind control spell. And Albedo started to battle Shalltear. Shalltear eventually going to have to use her armor and lance. And then Albedo starting to fight a lot more seriously than she was before she was doing it. Then, as Shalltear was about to kill Albedo, we see a bunch of people bursting through the Tomb of Nazarick, and she turns around and she sees a vampire lord, and she says, and she's all beaten up, so she says, "What are you doing here?" And he said that, "I'm here to kill you because you are too powerful to be controlled by me or any others." What's that supposed to mean? I'm part of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. And how were you able to put Albedo under mind control? As she got stabbed in the stomach by this vampire lord. And she then said, "What are you doing? Why would you do this?" Because she knew this vampire lord from her, well, a little while she was getting created. She met this vampire lord while she was training one day. So he then said, "I'm sorry, Shalltear, but it's out of my control." As she's wondering what that means, but she started to fade into darkness. And the reason that she's dying right now is because this blade was enchanted to kill any true vampire that is stabbed with it. So, as she's falling into darkness, her soul got taken along with all of her power. So, her body just disappeared. And the same thing happened to Alucard. So, she's then put in a black void as well. And the same thing similar to Alucard happened. But instead of saying Alucard's name, it was Shalltear. And he said that while you were dying, I've taken your power and spirit. And I'm going to reincarnate you into another world with another vampire lord. Really? Who? You don't know him, seeing he's not of your world, but his name is Alucard. Alucard? Weird name. Yeah, think of it backwards. Then he snaps his fingers as she disappeared, and she's now inside of another black void, but she sees somebody, and she thought in her head, say it backwards, and she thought Alucard. Then she thought it backwards, which would be Dracula. As she's wondering why this person has an acronym for Dracula as their name, so she's thinking that this person must be strong. And she said, "Hey, you." As this person turns around, and he sees a woman, and he says, "So you're the one Death was sending me with. So you're Alucard." "Yes, I am. So I'm assuming that you are Shalltear Bloodfallen?" And she said, "Yes." And she then said, "Why do you have an acronym for Dracula as your name?" And I'm gonna say that in the Overlord world, Dracula was a vampire king, so the king of the vampires, but he was thought to be a myth and a legend because he just disappeared out of nowhere, and people started to just think of him as a myth and a legend. So, as Shalltear is saying this, she then hears a crying, and she looks around, and she starts to see something different than a black void. She starts seeing the face of someone, and they're saying, "Miss, you have a very beautiful little girl," and they were given to a woman, and they saw the woman, and they weren't tempted to eat her, considering both of them were vampires, and they weren't tempted to eat her, so they thought they had a special connection to her somehow. And they started to think about it, and Alucard said reincarnation. And she said, "What about it? Since we're reincarnated, we are both a part of the same person. As that person would have to be born from a parent and father, but seeing how it wouldn't be ours, we were born of human attribute." And she thought about it, and she said, "That's why we aren't tempted to eat her." And Alucard said, "Yes." So we time skip 18 years. I know, long time skip. Not gonna lie, very long. But I'm gonna say her mother was a warrior, and her father was also a warrior. So they taught her swordsmanship, things like that. They taught her how to use a bow, how to track, things of the sort. They're fairly strong, so they taught her how to be strong enough to defend herself. And when she's 18, she's coming back from gathering dinner because they live in a forest. So she's holding up a cow and she's bringing it to the place where she lives. Also, I should say that she does live in 1026 AD, and she was born in Romania / Transylvania as well, futurely known as that. So she's walking and she starts to smell fire, and she's wondering what it is. So she starts to run faster because it's coming from her house, and she starts to see it smoke, and she starts hearing screaming as she sees her mother and father being killed by a group of men wearing robes, saying that their mother was a witch. I don't know. I'm gonna say she also delved in a little bit with the medical area, so that's why they think of her as a witch. So, and they're gonna kill her. They're killing her father as well because, well, he's married to a witch from their standards. So she sees this with her own eyes, and her eyes starts to become red with a slit, and she was filled with rage as she starts running forward, and her mom and dad are both burning because they tied them up to the house and lit it on fire, and so they're gonna die either way, whether she takes them off or not. So she runs at one of the guys and she hits him in the back of the head, watching the head. I should say that this will be a little gruesome and dark, so if you don't like those things, I wouldn't suggest this at all. Also, I don't own any of these pictures in the slightest. I just put this together. So, I gave you a warning. So, she hits the guy in the head, giving him a concussion, starting to make him have brain damage as he fell down to the ground. Because of her vampire strength, that's why she's able to do that. As the other guys heard it and turned around, and they saw this girl with red slit eyes, and they're yelling, "It's a demon!" And I'm gonna say they're yelling that because they're quotation mark priests, kind of, because they were taught the way of God, so that's why. But they do kill a lot, so that's why I said that like that. So they then ran at her, thinking that it's just one and they can take the demon on, and they start to get demolished by her, as she also got, toward the end, when she was fighting the head of the group, the head was more trained, like a lot more trained than the other guys. So the head of the group ran at her because she was wore down, because she hasn't used this power before, and she just got done fighting, like, I'm gonna say there were 10 guys there along with the head, so 11. she's got done fighting 10 guys, and she's tired, and the guy started running at her, and she saw him, and she blocked the sword, but she didn't know that he also was coming at it with an attack from the other side with a short sword that she didn't see, and she got stabbed in the heart, and blood started to come out of her eyes, and she started to think, is this it? Is this all that my life will be? And she hears a voice in her head, well, two actually, that say, a man and a female, that say, no, this isn't it. And she starts glowing with red light, and she starts to grow, and I'm gonna say she already looked like Shalltear, but she didn't have the dress and everything. She had the long white hair though. But she started to glow, and around her appeared the dress that you see here. This dress started to appear, and these gloves appeared on her hands, and she was wondering what was going on, as suddenly she couldn't control her body anymore, and we see the gloves moving as black mist started to form inside around the gloves on her hands, and two pistols appeared out of the mist, and they started to shoot at this guy, and this guy wasn't trained enough to hit bullets like in most anime. He just got lit up. I'm just saying. I'm gonna tell you. After that, she was able to control her body again and the guns disappeared, but the dress and the gloves stayed on, and she started to run toward her parents, and she got down, and her parents said, live on. I'm gonna say her name is I'm gonna say that they named her Azumi, I guess. I don't know. Azumi, whatever their last name was, because it's not gonna matter in a few minutes. Well, in the next episode. But so she then started to cry over her parents, and she thought that she will take revenge on the people who killed her family, and her eyes are permanently red now. So she then got up, and she said out loud, "Who are you, and where'd this come from?" So I think that will end it off for today's part 1 of What If Female Deku was a reincarnation of Alucard in Shalltear Bloodfallen.